Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Brandon Kyle. I am the Executive Director of Alumni and Family Engagement and Annual Giving at Pitzer. Welcome to our last session of our virtual family orientation series via Pitzer at Home. Throughout the week, we've heard from an incredible group of staff and faculty, parent volunteers and alumni, and even from student leadership about not only the logistics and importance of your arrival, but also the value of our campus partnerships and core values, and the excitement around your joining our community, of course. This session is near and dear to my heart in that it showcases the direct impact that your support at every level has on our students. In this case, as an example, how we were able to respond swiftly to the needs of our community during the pandemic. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for the session, Kamalei Lee, who is our Director of Annual Giving and Staff Liaison for the Student Emergency Fund. She is joined today by our Vice President of Student Affairs, Sandy Vazquez, and two of the most incredible parent ambassadors and Family Leadership Council representatives that I have had the joy of working with for over the last year, Linda Quan, parent of a student of the class of 2022, and Caroline Moassessi, parent of a student from the class of 2020. I'd like to thank our entire panel for joining us today and all of you for tuning in to this important discussion. So with that said, I will turn it over to Kamalei. Thanks, Kamalei.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here and happy to be collaborating with these panelists. I'm just excited to dive in and hear them share their thoughts. So I wanted to set the stage, and as Brandon said, this session is about Pitzer's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and supporting students in lots of different ways. So everybody can recall March 2020 of last year was a pretty hectic time, no matter where you were, who you are, everybody has a story. But at Pitzer, personally, I can remember that time vividly. The students were gearing up for their spring break. Our office is very student facing. So I worked with students directly and, watching them kind of go through the process while I was going through it as a staff member of what was going to happen to our team transitioning to remote. So I wanted to toss the question to our panelists. What was your memory when you first heard Pitzer was closing its doors and students were being sent home because of the COVID-19 pandemic? So I wanted to toss it to Sandy, if you want to answer that question first.
Thank you, Kamalei, and thank you, Brandon, for having us. And it's a pleasure to join you, Caroline and Linda, here today. Reflecting back on the guidance at that time, I recall immediately working with our staff to design what we call the Pathway Forward Blueprint, an internal guide for how were we going to safely manage getting our students back home. As you could imagine, airlines were shutting down, embassies were closing off access to be able for some of our international students to return home. At the grocery stores, at local, other retail stores, access to essential needs was depleting. Masks were extremely hard to come by. I recall even, some of our students who were really trying to get back home to their home country before the borders were going to shut down, and searching everywhere, the Inland Empire, here locally for face masks, and really having a difficult time accessing them. We in Student Affairs became a hub to where we really became a central management of working collaboratively with many different departments across the college to really try to develop a no barriers access to support center. We had students whose families had been impacted by COVID in different ways, to where they may have been a family that was not in need of financial resources at one time, but businesses had been starting to close down across the country, across the globe. And so we were also finding ourselves in places where we were working with families who traditionally, did not need any further financial support, who needed access to support for their student. And so, thinking back to, what our office was able to, work on most importantly was being able to safely get students home. We provided support for 70 students to be able to get flight transportation home. That includes across the globe. As you can imagine, flights to return to some international destination at that time was around $2,000 or more minimum. We did our very best to be able to work with our domestic students to also be able to establish safe pathways for them to get home, transportation. Many of our students do not have vehicles on campus, and so we also activated an airport transportation service. At the same time, the importance of the continuity of academic support and not wanting to disrupt the academic progress of students was really important. At the same time, we were building and launching a full-blown laptop and student technology device loaning program. We had initiated a pilot program in 2017, and now we have a pretty robust program in place for students. We also were providing Wi-Fi hotspot devices for students as they needed them. Housing insecurity, thinking back, to situations and stories, especially, I saw to think about our students from international destinations. And I apologize for getting emotional. I haven't really made time to think about what we just lived through in a long time. And these students and their families have remained with us. And even through the most challenging and uncertain of times, our community came together. We made a decision. I remember I told the team, we are going to fully deplete our student emergency fund because that is our core values in action. And we will use every single cent to support our students through this difficult time. And so we were able to provide housing support to 60 students who needed it. Not many, not because of the choice, but because these were students who, the borders were closed to them. We had students who lost their access to their visa. So because the decisions that the embassies were making, of course, to safely protect, the borders and members in various countries, some of our students were left not only with being stuck here, but also then needing help with renewing their visa documentation. And so we were able to provide support for that as well. Food insecurity, as you could imagine, many of you might recall how difficult it was to access groceries at various times, different types of food items, basic essential toiletries. And so we made sure that we also provided our students with food support as well. We are the first college to also partner with CalFresh program. We were able to leverage also public services support to those students. We also partnered with the Pomona Valley Transportation Authority and the city of Claremont to activate Claremont Dial-A-Ride services for our students so that they can get safe transportation to go to a local grocery store to buy resources that they need. We were sending gift cards to students to be able to buy food resources for themselves and basic toiletries. And so I share that to say that, I am so proud, the stories that students shared with us, when they would return safely home to their state or their home country. They said, our peers, what we just experienced at Pitzer was a stark difference from what some of their peers received in terms of support. And I think the ethos that was student led of mindful of each other, that has grounded us through the pandemic and even still through this time in our return to campus planning, really threads the needle about what it truly means, for our core values in action, but also to live out being mindful of each other. Our students were so mindful. We opened up the doors to any student, regardless of financial status, that was made known to the college, to ask for support because we knew that circumstances for families changed. We also recognize that in the process early on, the federal CARES Act funding was restrictive towards international and undocumented students, and so the emergency fund allowed us to provide equitable access to additional support dollars for students, regardless of the federal guidance. And so I cannot be more thankful for parents, for the community, for staff and faculty who came together to make this possible. It would not have been made possible had we not had the Student Emergency Fund support.
Thank you, Sandy, so much for sharing all of that. It's really hard to summarize what's happened since then, and reflecting on the memories. It's kind of painful, but beautiful to reflect on at the same time. Caroline and Linda, so for those in the room, Caroline is a parent of a student. Their family is from Reno, so they're not local to Claremont. They're a plane ride or a very long car drive away. But Linda is her and her student are local to Claremont. They're from the Pasadena area. So from the parent perspective, if you want to tag team, what was it like at that time? Your students were at Pitzer at the time. So what was it like when they called you, when the emails were going out, when they were communicating with you, when their friends at the other consortium colleges were, going through the same thing? I wonder if you can share to that.
Should I go first? Or we can just go together? Unmute, Linda. So yes, I'm in the Reno area, and it was just crazy. We knew it was coming. We knew things were going down, and my son had texted me and said, they're going to send us home. I'm waiting for the email. And then he called and he said, okay, I want to read the email with you. So it was very emotional, kind of hearing the end of his senior year. And I said, okay, we've got this down. All right. You've got to snap to it. Like, you got to take care of business first here. I know this is like really emotional and really crazy, but take care of business first. So you need to be packed. Someone will come get you, who we don't know, but someone will be there by Friday to pick you up by 6. Be ready. We were in the middle of winter storms here in Reno, so we actually had to time driving through the mountains. And so it was a little crazy, but I just said, be ready at 6. We're going to leave Saturday morning at 6 a.m. I said, but reach out to the other kids who live in Northern Nevada. See if anyone needs a ride. We're going to rent a SUV or something that will carry things. And it was just fascinating. I mean, looking back at fascinating, stressful during the time, but just really fascinating how calm he was. And then watching, like, in the next few hours, how the students started coming together. And a lot of this is in thanks to Pitzer, because I think Pitzer was responding, everything that Sandy said was starting to unfold, and it was happening. And so what I started hearing from my son, was stories of kids talking to each other, helping each other. They're, who's going where, can we jump on, and get a ride, and he did reach out to the Northern Nevada, the Reno kids, to see who needed a ride. And for at least a day or two, there was a kid who was going to jump in with whatever we rented to come back. But then at the last minute, he was able to get a parent to come get him. But it was really interesting watching these students really rise up to like what Sandy was saying and becoming this community. I mean, even my son was sharing things with other kids. So we have food allergy and asthma in our family, and my son has food allergies and asthma. So I had sent him a lot of heavy duty cleaners, hospital grade, actually disinfectants. Like, before everything blew up, I kind of knew things were going to blow up. And just because of his asthma and so forth, I had sent some things to him. And so he had called and said, oh, I was giving them away because there were certain students who were scared to go home because their parents had cancer or health issues. And these students were feeling that they were a danger. And so it was really cool that he was able to take his things and spread them around. And I just loved how the students were able to communicate and start supporting each other. Cyrus had a friend who could not go back to his home country. So they just spent the day together, just kind of talking and processing. And so it was just, frightening, scary. I mean, every emotion hit, but then in the same time, so heartwarming to see those students come together. But I've talked too much. Linda, do you share your local stuff and I'll stop talking.
Thank you for having me. Yes, my daughter and I live in South Pasadena, which is south of the actual city of Pasadena, but part of Los Angeles. But the day of, it was actually on my daughter's birthday. So prior to that, my frame of mind was more about the office itself, because I'm in public service. We want to still be able to serve our constituents on how to get them help. I work in the bankruptcy court, so we were trying to get that all settled. Meanwhile, to me, Pitzer's like Disneyland. It's a happy place. My kid will be fine. They've got their whole system down. It's safe. Their friends are tight. The staff and administration are all spectacular. There's not one single iffy. So I felt my kid was going to be fine. But I got a phone call that day. Mom, I'm coming home. Okay. Thinking, oh, okay. She wants to hang with me on her birthday. I was in total denial. And I had planned on going out that way just to drop off a cake or something so she can celebrate and so forth. She goes, no, Mom, no, we're told we all have to evacuate. And in my mind, I was at the office. I wasn't thinking clearly. I went, oh, okay. So, with emails going back and forth and conversations going back and forth, my concern was, I'm local, but what about everyone else? I had some geographic guilt. Does that make sense? Because I'm here, I'm able to pick up my kid. Caroline, I've known for a year and a half, 2.5 years. I know she was able to come down, but there are kids that are not able. Conversations I had with Madison, there's international students. She had roommates that were international students her first year. I'm thinking, yes, they have the means to do that, but there are kids that are too afraid because where they were going, the exposure has raised incrementally, and they were scared. There were students that we learned about that, as Caroline shared, that they rented a car. They would pick up cousins along the way that were also on at a Midwest school. So they planned that. All the kids were so resilient during this whole process. They planned on renting cars. They planned on how to move their things to ensure that there was equity in the luggage, that, no one person was bringing all their stuff while the one's basically having a carry-on. They prepared their food and so forth to get through. During this whole time, there were check-ins with my daughter that make sure, hey, all my teammates are heading east, north, south, wherever, internationally. So that was done. During this whole entire time, there were students that couldn't leave, and they were making arrangements to stay in Los Angeles. So from our point, we were able to assist in terms of, okay, that zip code in LA is not the most desirable. You might want to consider someone else. So parents are able to situate some of the students who stay here because it was safer for them as opposed to flying home, at least for the interim. Yeah, so I can honestly say that Pitzer did such a phenomenal job making sure the kids had all their computers, laptops, Wi-Fi, homework assignments. Professors were pretty much on call 24/7. Administration was available. And all of us, I wouldn't say were kind of white knuckling, but I want to say deep down in our hearts, I think we felt that our kids were in a safe place, as opposed to other colleges where you hear stories where they couldn't leave. Food was being delivered. No food was delivered. They couldn't go out. If there was emergency, they couldn't leave. They had to wait, and it would be, they were on queue. They'll be there tomorrow. Food is going to be on the way, at 11 p.m. and they didn't get their food till maybe next day, and it might be an apple. There were horror stories like that. But Pitzer, when this all unfolded, they had all their ducks in a row, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Caroline. Our next question, I feel like everybody answered it, but I'll open it up again if you want to elaborate on any topics that you you've hit on already or new ones. With the philanthropic supportive donors and thoughtful leadership from top administrators. And I also want to throw in volunteers, whether you're an official volunteer, like a family leadership council member, or parents, students, whoever, just stepping up and helping their peers. How is the college able to aid its community members, particularly its most vulnerable? And then how did the Pitzer family community come together to aid students during this time? So if anybody wants to jump in, I'll let you elaborate.
Some of the strategies that we utilize and we continue to utilize is working closely with the Office of Financial Aid to identify those students who are in the greatest need, so that we can send them targeted communication. But for our communications with students, we send broad requests to students to ask, if anyone needs support, here's how you can, let us know that you might need support and how we might be able to help. That has been very effective for us. We do have I'll put the link in the chat here of the Student Emergency Fund and how students can submit a request for support. So a student can turn in a request any time of day from wherever they are for support, and our team will review that, as well. Right now, we are grateful that we continue to have the additional support through HERF and the CARES Act funding that we're still also able to try to maximize to, best meet our return to campus planning needs for students, to be able to welcome them back in a safe manner. In addition, I did want to also highlight, we do also have mental health and wellness, and our Strive to Thrive program is another focal program that is also driven by a parent gift. The Raskin family helped make possible the development of the Strive to Thrive program, and it has really been an anchor for our students during the pandemic. We're really excited to be able to continue the program into this semester that really focuses on holistic well-being. The program was designed in a hybrid model. And so, when we launched the program, shortly thereafter, we had to close. And so the very essential basics of the hybrid model of the program really brought to life and really connected. Students resonated with the program across the globe. And so it's really beautiful to see how many students are following the program on social media, accessing the online resources that have been created through our internal Sakai platforms that are student facing, but also it's really beautiful to see that we also have staff and faculty who also want to be able to access and be part of the Strive to Thrive program in a community as well. So I'll put that link in the chat as well for mental health and well-being. I will have to say that part of the support also during this time has been to be able to provide access to students who might need additional co-payment support for mental health and well-being support to get access to mental health care wherever they may be. And that has been really a gift to be able to, remove that barrier for access to care to students.
Thank you, Sandy.
Here, I'll jump in. Yeah, we did talk about a lot, and what really struck me, like from the parent side, was watching how confident the Pitzer students were. Like, again, hearing through my son that they knew they could get help. I mean, Cyrus explained to me he had some friends who didn't have suitcases, and Pitzer bought them suitcases and got the plane tickets and, really helped organize. And that was a very big contrast from when I was talking to my other peers, my other friends with kids at other schools across the country, where it was like, okay, get off campus, you have 5 days, go. Where Pitzer is providing boxes and tape and so forth. And so I'm just so grateful and thankful to Pitzer for helping that, because, we felt very lucky, like Linda was saying, we were within a driving's distance, but not everybody was. But I did want to share this summer, I was able to make some philanthropy calls. I never knew how, and I've been taught by Pitzer staff here on how to make a philanthropy call. And so I'm actually feeling quite proud of that. But it was really fun calling up people who had donated previously to Pitzer and hearing their stories about when the students left. I mean, there was this one gentleman from the South who, was thrilled I called, and just thrilled to talk about that when his son head across country, it was like we just talked about, where kids were just jumping into cars. Kids were just helping each other, getting into cars. There was this like caravan, going to the South, and kids were in it. But then what he told me that he really appreciated is the son was having some mental health issues with this abrupt transition, the pandemic, everything that was happening. And he was able to still get support from Pitzer College. And the dad was just so grateful for that. And just so pleased, because he's like, oh, I thought, my son came home, that was kind of like it. He's just going to do classes. He goes, but they actually provided this really important mental health support that helped their son get through a really difficult time. And he wasn't the only person who said that to me. When I was making these calls, there was two other families actually that talked about how much they appreciated, Pitzer being there and helping their student just get through this crazy time. I still can't get my head fully around it, because we're still in it, but still trying to get there. So that was kind of my perspective. Linda, how about you?
Thanks for sharing that about the phone calls that were made. Within the Family Leadership Council, we have the subcommittees that some of us chair, and one of them is Events Volunteer Committee. And this past year, we had spoken about reaching out to every family, and we scaled it where we attacked each grade level, and we started with a freshman. We started with the freshmen, then moved on to seniors because they were departing, and then we rounded out with the sophomores and ended up with the juniors. And with each class's phone call, each family heard from a Family Leadership Council member, be it an actual phone call, a voicemail, an email, and so forth, because we wanted to know how they were doing since the pandemic took over. And since then, we want to know how it was. And it wasn't a phone call about giving back yet. It was not about annual giving. We want to know how the family was holding up during this entire time. And the calls that I made, as Caroline can attest to, we heard from some wonderful families that were so resilient and was so delighted to hear that their student is thriving given the circumstances, and that students were reaching out to classmates, learning about other classmates, learning with other classmates, along with the professors that, some of us, some including myself, were not as tech savvy, and we all got through it. And every comment that I received, and Caroline too, that these families were so delighted in how Pitzer really took care of every single family, be it relocation, be it mental health awareness, especially mental awareness, and tuition, the refunding of room and board. Some are able to give the whole entire amount. Some of us cannot. Some of us just can give a portion. And it was still very well received. And Sandy, as you mentioned, every single penny went back to the community. And I think that's a testament of the core values of Pitzer, from the leadership all the way down to a brand new parent that may have not been on campus for sending off their child.
I also want to, highlight, and thank, Caroline and Linda for all of your support, but also the advancement team. I can't say enough how we all came together and united as a close-knit community that we are to, support our students in a united manner. One of the other things that we're so proud of is a partnership with parents for career internships, job shadowing opportunities. And some of our students were still able to have some of those experiences in a virtual environment. And that's especially thanks to the ongoing partnership with all of our parents, continuing to be committed to making a transformational impact on the pathway and life of our students. I just modeling for our students what it means to be part of our community. It is not a surprise to me to see your students living out our values in the ways that they did, especially during the campus closures. If I wish you could have seen on the ground here the last moments of how students were connecting with each other before they were departing, but really, as you all have highlighted, connecting and supporting each other through the process. And I think also even beyond, and creating support groups where clubs and organizations became these, outlets of support for each other to lean into community. We have such a profound community, and we're really excited to welcome our students, and most importantly also our families back into our in-person experience.
And, I just want to add on to just a little bit what Sandy was saying. Again, big thank yous to Advancement. But what I really, really appreciated is how Pitzer administration came to the parents, the Family Leadership Council, and said, you know what, we need your help actually. Like, we are in a time of crisis here. And I loved that honesty and that transparency. Like, we need some volunteers and here's where we need it. And I loved how the volunteers rose up and again, making these calls. It was fascinating because I really expected some angry, grumpy people because this is a really tough time. And everyone was just very appreciative. So I just wanted to add that I love that Pitzer walks the talk, but that they're very transparent and just very honest. Like, hey, this is tough. We're in this together. Let's figure it out.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. And yet to highlight the support in lots of different ways. We have our donor support, but we also have a very strong culture of volunteerism. It's a very integral part of the Pitzer education, the Pitzer experience. Volunteerism is crucial to any nonprofit. Pitzer is a nonprofit. This is you can donate to Pitzer, but we also need a lot of support. We recognize how expensive a Pitzer education is, and honestly, that's still not enough to make the show happen. And really, we depend on our families and our alumni, faculty and staff, everybody to give back in the ways that they can through their time, their talents, their treasures. And that's something that's really ingrained in the ethos here, and why people choose to, I think, stay and be a part of this community. I also want to highlight it from a staff perspective. Sandy and I can relate to this from a staff perspective. This was a very chaotic time. As you probably know, we have a shared governance policy here at Pitzer. I'm a member of the Budget Implementation Committee. It's a shared governance committee comprised of students, faculty, staff. We met all through the pandemic virtually, especially last summer when this college had to make crucial decisions of what's the financial reality. We're a young school. Our endowment is not as established as some of our other sister colleges. So how are we going to financially support not only the students, but the staff, especially our staff who couldn't work because they didn't have a job, like our dining hall staff, our facilities maintenance staff that their roles kind of depend on the students being on campus. And when the campus is closed down, what do? Pitzer was the only school in the consortium that did not do any involuntary furloughs or layoffs. They paid people to stay on board. They paid people who made X amount of dollars or less. They didn't get any staff salary cuts. Staff who made a certain amount of money and faculty or higher, they took salary cuts to provide for resources for our more vulnerable employees. And that, for me personally, was really special. I was personally benefited from that. I was personally scared, what would the financial impact have on me? Would I still have a job? And it's really moving because I know not all the sister colleges, in the consortium could say the same thing. So I wanted to share that because you don't know how valuable your job is until it feels like it's in jeopardy. And, it's really meaningful to, especially from the advancement perspective, to see the donors play a role in keeping all of us employed, safe, protected, supported in lots of different ways. So thank you to the parent community for that. We're running up on the last few questions, and I feel like we also kind of answered this one, but if anybody wants to elaborate, as we enter the new school year and return to campus, how can students continue to seek support if needed? How can parents get involved in philanthropy at Pitzer, whether it's through volunteering or sharing treasures? If anybody wants to elaborate on that.
I'll start. I'll take that one. My experience with volunteerism began based on curiosity. My volunteerism during my daughter's years prior to Pitzer was, at a medium level and so forth. And I wanted to continue that, but yet I wanted to create my own path where my volunteerism does not affect her. Oh, my mom's on campus, or my mom being a helicopter and so forth. So I started asking questions. I asked about, you have an event, is there anything I can do, a phone call or a greeting, so forth. And Kamalei and her team said, you know what, come by at this event. We can sit you up at a booth and you can say hello. And that led to phone calls for career services and pulling back, returning job opportunities for an internship or soliciting new possible opportunities. From there, it led to being an ambassador. I was helping out at parent orientation, parent weekend during February, welcoming parents back to campus. And from there, it led to my curiosity to Family Leadership Council. And I, along with Caroline, now are part of nearly 20, I think, Caroline, of involved parents. And we help the various leadership on campus to help lead the schools along with our students. There's many ways to be involved. You can commit as little as you want, as much as you want. You can send out emails for the school in terms of sharing on Facebook, Twitter, your personal Instagram. You can do it by events. If you have time, you can write out note cards. You can make phone calls at your leisure. There's no set deadline in terms of what time you have to make it. There's other ways you can, if you know of professions that offer jobs. I know that our students are even more intrigued and thirst for jobs virtually or in person when things open up. You can volunteer at events that we have on campus. You can support our athletics program, show up at games when that is allowed. There's fundraising, there's communication. Shout out to Caroline who chairs that one. There's student alumni. We partner up with the alumni board in that committee. If you are a former alumni, please join us. If you know an alumni, maybe make that phone call. Hey, my kid's at Pitzer, or of a relative that's interested in Pitzer, the 5 C's. And of course, there's the nomination and the governance that help lead the Family Leadership Council. And I want one more plug. Kamalei, you guide the Student Impact Council. And my daughter had the opportunity to be the president of that. And what that group does is student-led, and it emphasizes the importance of philanthropy and giving back. Yes, it starts out with giving food to the students on campus, but it's a start. And they have these little side projects and events that they have throughout the year, and some of them are off campus.
Just to dovetail on Linda, unless I'm cutting you off.
No, I ramble.
No, you're fabulous. There's room for everybody at the table. I mean, some people are able to be generous financial donors, and that is amazing and fantastic. And some people can just send an email and say, hey, you know what? I have a friend who has a company who might be able to do an internship, or where I work, they might be able to do an internship. I mean, so you can get involved in any level. And I personally get involved because I'm just so enamored and in support of Pitzer's ethos and how we just walk the talk. I mean, I'm so proud of what Kamalei just said, you know, how we took care of our vulnerable at the school. I mean, boy, that just speaks to us. And, you know, what Sandy was saying about the emergency fund and let's use every penny. Yes, that's the fund I donate to. And, you know, that's what I want to hear as a parent. So Pitzer just does what I want to see in the world. I think the world needs a place like Pitzer, and we need students being educated at a place like Pitzer. But what again makes it so lovely for me, you know, is that anyone can do anything. You know, if you speak a different language, that could really help maybe on orientation. If there's a family, you know, coming from the similar environment to you, where you can maybe translate a little or just make them feel better. I mean, that right there is just a beautiful thing. So there's just so many ways to volunteer. And I can speak for Linda on this. If anyone's ever curious, just reach out. We're happy to get on a phone call, you know, and talk and to share more. But there's just something for everybody. It's just to me, it's most important about just being part of the community, just in any way you can. There are many ways.
I have something else to add. You know, there are many of us in the professions, even if you can offer a 15-minute phone call to a student and be a mentor, they'd be more than happy to make sure that it's at your convenience. And maybe they just want to know about finance. They want about being a lawyer, something. If you can allow 15-minute phone calls, contact career services and let them know, hey, I'd be more than welcome to virtually have someone shadow me for 15 minutes or half an hour and so forth. And then Caroline, I remember you shared with me a really good story. And this is a true story. She needed help with her website. She found an intern, a student to help her. Remember that? That was awesome.
You know, just, yeah, that's right. To add on to that, it's true. As in my work, you know, we needed to get a little consulting, and it was like, oh, wait a minute, we have students right here at Pitzer. So yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. That is a really good thing to do.
And, you know, the Career Center, you know, as Linda and Caroline mentioned, really is a space where parents and their time and treasure by way of expertise is such an invaluable gift to our students. You know, we have an industry speaker series. So if there's any, you know, field of expertise, we're even being a guest speaker to meet with students interested in going to particular different, you know, fields or pathways in various industries or fields. Being able to access that treasure of knowledge around how, you know, to navigate the pathway, steps for success, that is just so invaluable to our students. And again, we're so grateful for the ongoing partnership with parents to make possible internship and job shadowing opportunities as well.
You know, time is especially important now because we all are going through it, or hopefully seeing the tail end of this pandemic. All jobs have shifted. Every single position, every company, schools, families, all roles have shifted. So I would encourage those that can offer time, a phone call, an email, a sounding board to any of our students from freshmen on to graduating seniors. I think it's really important.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Very powerful stories we heard today. I think if you had any doubts about is Pitzer a real community, I think we summed it up pretty well here. It's all hands on deck. We all know each other. We are not afraid to work with each other. We would love to hear and work from you. If you ever have any questions, comments, you want to know how to access a resource, or if you see a need, a resource isn't available, how can you get involved to work with some of our campus partners, our volunteers to create that resource, like Sandy was mentioning about this Drive to Thrive program. So thank you, everybody. Our panelists, if anybody attendees want to throw a question in the Q&A, but I'll kind of wrap it up. Any final thoughts or ideas anybody wants to throw out there?
I would like to highlight that hopefully every family will visit the PC Families webpage, the website, the webpage. And if you're not getting communications from the school, please do so. There is a section where you can sign up for what you want to know about. So you're not flooded, but you get to decide and show your curiosity. Thank you for having us, Kamalei and Sandy.
I
Caroline,
know. I want to say thank you too to everybody. I mean, just for Pitzer for creating this and the staff, and for everyone who's here just interested in this conversation. I mean, it's a beautiful community as you've seen, and we're only going to get stronger and better when we're together. So I just really appreciate this moment in time.
And I again just want to echo the gratitude to everyone here and Brandon, who I know is also with us as well. You know, Caroline and Linda, and welcome to the Pitzer family. And I look forward to seeing you all at Move In. I know that I'll see, you know, Linda and Caroline will, you know, will also be with us as we're going to have a, you know, different tables set up throughout Move In. And we're just excited to welcome you to the family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can't wait to see everyone.
Yes, see you all later. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.